this is exactly what sets the Montreal Canadiens apart. After we are in Brossard looking at all these guys in development camp, one particular thing has stood out not only among the prospects this year, but the young players on the team, players drafted in years past, and it's exactly what makes Montreal so scary moving forward. We have to dive into what a couple of newly drafted prospects said and why it's such good news for Habs fans. But also, speaking of good news, Kirby Dach was taking the ice today, and there are a lot of questions about his future that we will dive into. And finally, we got a couple more signings that we got to talk about. Some subtle ones, but very important ones. A bunch of great stuff coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. And let's start with the signings, Jesse. Now, we got a couple of one-year, two-way deals. Now, these are very important for Montreal. We'll get into Gaizo in a second, but I think I wanted to start with Sean Farrell. Look, just to hype him up, because he was an RFA. He was given the qualifying offer, which means, hey, we believed in him. We weren't just going to let him be a UFA. Sign him to a one-year, two-way deal. Two-way, again, for those of you unfamiliar, just means you get paid at a different rate if you play in the NHL versus AHL. Doesn't have to do anything with, like, the ability to be called up or anything. But Jesse, after the second half of his year last year, just seeing that we gave him the QO and then brought him back in another one-year deal to prove himself, I'm actually very optimistic to see what he does this next season, because the second half this year under Pascal Vincent was, like, otherworldly.
And that's why the Habs brass aren't giving up on him. We're not either. And the way that it's looking for Sean Farrell is like his journey to having an NHL roster spot. I don't believe it's in Montreal, given like that we have another Cole Caufield in the top six who plays kind of that similar skill type of role. But the way to get to the NHL, I believe it's still through the Montreal Canadiens organization. Like, Sean Farrell finished off the second part of his season last year. Really strong finish, 20 goals, 44 points in 67 games. And he's feeling like, okay, I had like some good momentum. And I think he's probably feeling the same way. Like, is his spot, in the NHL in Montreal? Probably not. But with Laval and the great organization, he feels like he can probably get a good opportunity to really prove himself to get that spot on another roster somewhere else in the NHL moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And look, we're seeing that happen now. Of course, Cayden Primeau, made his name with Montreal and a great season with Laval, and he ended up getting shipped to Carolina, where hopefully he'll get more opportunity. Logan Mailloux, of course, traded for Zachary Bolduc. Mailloux played great with Laval. Not really much space on the Habs roster with the way it is. He gets moved. Could very well be the case for Sean Farrell, but you really never know. I'm just happy he's on this Laval Rocket team that's hoping to win a Calder Cup next year. But also Laval made another nice move here. Now, this is Marc Gaizo. Now, I don't have his AHL stats here. He did spend a lot of the past few years in the AHL, including about half of this season, but he did manage to play 46 games for the Nashville Predators. And the cool thing with him, Jesse, is again, Laval is bolstering their D-core. There are some rumors floating around there about a William Trudeau injury, whether he'll be ready for next year. I'm not totally sure on that at this point, but we are bolstering the D-line right now. There is a lot of defensemen in Laval. Owen Pross is going back to junior, but you can never have too many. This is one of these guys that kind of, especially like as we had Gustav Lindstrom, we had a couple guys that could be called up, that kind of fringe NHL guy. Gaizo would have been on pace for about 100 hits and 100 blocks had he played a full NHL season, and that kind of guy in the NHL or AHL is very important. I love this depth signing here, bringing in a guy who has that NHL experience, 25 years old, can hit, can block shots, can play good defense with a little bit of offensive upside at times. Again, just these purposeful moves that just make teams harder to play against. Whether he gets any time in the NHL is unsure, probably not, but regardless, no matter where he ends up, like, he's one of these guys that just makes an impact and you always love to have on the ice.
Yeah, and he's a good skater. He has some experience which the Habs can kind of draw forth from at 25 years of age, and also some good hockey IQ. So really nice to have those depths in the situation. Can be a call-up option depending on what's going on. Always nice to know with this very young D-core that we still have, that you can kind of bring forth a guy that's going to be able to, he played a fair amount of game last year, 46 games with the Nashville Predators. It's probably his size, Josh, that's holding him back more than anything else at 5'11", 188 pounds. That being said, he really knows how, to put himself in effective places on the ice. Very intelligent player. Again, more of a depth piece, but like both Farrell and Gaizo here, like I am both really liking what they're bringing to this organization. And I like that Kent Hughes, he's not forgetting about Laval. Like he's helping the Montreal Canadiens, but also is really doing things to help improve the AHL team as well.
100%. And hey, we have a pretty good track record with bringing in a slightly undersized defenseman from the Nashville Predators. I'm I'm just saying, you never know. Him and Carrier linking back up here. It could be very cool. But leave your thoughts on these two little subtle signings down below. Because, hey, every little signing all across the org is very important. But one other very important thing, Jesse, is the outlook for Kirby Dach. This is a great tweet by Stu Cowan. You see Kirby skating around. He's recovering from knee surgery still. He was on the ice in Brassard, and it was really cool to see him skating. And I'm seeing a lot of buzz now, Jesse, especially after the center market is just brutal in free agency. Of course, Pius Suter, the last decent real center on the market, just signed in St. Louis. So, like, you know, even though I didn't really think he would come to Montreal, he's off the market now, and we know Kent said that it's probably going to be via trade that we address the center situation, but Kirby Dach is kind of the guy penciled in right now for that 2C role. A lot of people sliding Zachary Bolduc there on that second line. Seeing him out there skating, Jesse, hearing the reports of how in good shape he is, how he's setting his own records in the gym and stuff. I'm seeing a lot of optimism, actually, more than ever before online about Kirby Dach's future as the 2C, at least temporarily for this team. Are you part of team optimistic right now with Kirby? I love to see him back there. I know there's a chip on his shoulder. I know that this guy wants to get back on the ice and playing for the Habs more than almost anyone. And look, this spot is still there for him to prove himself. And I don't know, maybe it's just like, I kind of forget like how hurt he's been, but I think back to that good time he had and when he was driving play as a center, and I just think like there is a world where this could happen, although maybe a little unlikely.
Yeah, and for where I'm kind of sitting on the fence when it comes, I'm not holding my breath when it comes to Kirby Dach. That being said, all signs point to Kirby being extremely motivated into coming into this next year. Again, the conditioning test has been the best that it's ever kind of been. Like, there's lots of things to like about Kirby Dach. We're seeing clips from him practicing. The shot's looking heavy. We sometimes forget that Kirby can drop the gloves with some of the best of them in the league. Like, those are things that you like from Kirby Dach when he's bringing that physical game. Again, you know, like, he's a player with a lot of poise in the offensive zone, knows how to kind of slow down the game. That being said, Josh, it's like, I still want to have him more as wing at anything else. I'm almost careful to put like too much pressure on him. I just feel, Josh, like we need to win those faceoffs. We need to get that puck possession. Maybe we could try him there at a 2C. I'd still prefer him at a wing. I think his best success with the Montreal Canadiens has been on the wing. We need to get him back there ASAP. Just get his game back, period, and really kind of take it forward. But that being said, we are seeing some really impressive stuff, some clips, everything, seeing him on the ice. It's looked like he's moving really well, having no mobility issues here. So lots of positive things going forward because, I mean, deep, like buried way in there with Kirby Dach, there's an amazing player. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be up to Martin St. Louis, and I would argue Kirby Dach more than anything else, to see can they kind of bury that good player that we know is there, that has all these amazing skills. Can they get this player out? Because if not, like Kirby Dach does have that potential to be that X factor, but at the same time, like he knows that he needs to bring it so that he avoids having too much of a pressure cooker situation next year in Montreal.
Yeah, I mean, it's really yet to be seen. I tend to agree with you. I'm not holding my breath, but like you said, there's something there. And look, if he's not the 2C, I wonder who it's going to be. I still think that there could very well be a trade going down this offseason for that 2C. I mean, look, there's a lot of time left before next season starts. It doesn't have to go down in the first 2 days of free agency. We can afford to be patient, but leave your thoughts on Kirby down below. Are you okay starting the season with him at 2C, especially with these new acquisitions? Hey, you know, maybe Bolduc could play some center. We've been throwing that out there. You never really know, but at least we're glad to see him back, hopefully healthy, and excited to see what he can do this year. But Jesse, we got to move into something else now. And look, talking about our draft picks this year, last year, all the young players on the team, there's one thing that everyone has in common, and it is one of the most incredible attitudes that these guys have, and an attitude not only just about, you know, being positive when things aren't going your way, but just also wanting to be better and showing like I am confident in myself. And there was one really today, and we'll just touch on this just for a second because I think it's a really cool quote. This was asked to Alexis Cournoyer. He said, you know, how does it feel to be here around all the top Habs prospects today? He's like, I'm also one of the top prospects, just without hesitation. This guy, I mean, Alexis Cournoyer, look, and not a ton to say about this, Jesse, but I love the confidence that he is showing. Like this level of like, hey, I am one of the best already is something that we've seen through a lot of other Habs players. They're like, look, I know how good I am, right? And we'll expand on this in a second when it comes to LJ Mooney, but I just find it really fun to see that these guys, like even when you watch Cournoyer speak, he just exudes his confidence like, oh yeah, no one's going to beat me. I think that kind of attitude can get you pretty far if you're willing to put in the work too.
Especially for goaltenders, right, where so much of the game is mental. Obviously, no shortness of confidence coming from some Montreal Canadiens goaltenders prospects. We don't have to look any further than Jacob Fowler, but I mean, he's right to believe so. I mean, there's no way that he's getting drafted unless he can really kind of hang with these players. So, of course, you kind of need to believe first. Lots of things to like with this prospect. And, really happy to be getting another very interesting prospect from Quebec back in the fold here.
Yeah, for sure. Trois-Rivières. I believe Sammy Blais is also from there, right? So anyway, there's a lot of guys coming into this org. A lot of Quebecois stuff happening all of a sudden here. Or maybe Blais from someone else. I don't remember. Maybe it's Bolduc who's from Trois-Rivières. I'm starting to lose track. But just to expand on that, you mentioned Fowler. And like one thing with Jacob Fowler when he was drafted, it was like, look, we saw those. Do I still have that picture? I don't think I still have the picture of Dr. David. Anyway, whatever. But Jacob Fowler, he was like, look, everyone's doubted me my whole life. Like, and I got there and I proved myself time and time again. And that was one thing that stuck out to us about Fowler. Laine Hutson, same thing. He's like, I know I have the skill. I'm going to show it. You don't believe me? It doesn't matter. I'm going to prove it. And LJ Mooney, this guy is awesome. I mean, first off, just look at this guy's smile. He's there. Doesn't he remind you of Cole just looking at him? Remind you of Cole Caufield? And when he was asked about role models, he said he loved watching Pavel Datsyuk when he was growing up. But he also said when Caufield came to the Habs, watching him at the National Development Program, just a smaller guy, just trying to model my game after him. Pretty fun to watch, obviously. Great role model for me. But what really sets these guys apart, Jesse, and again, we're just picking a couple examples, but again, it seems to be a constant theme, because this quote here reminds me so much of Fowler and so much of what we were hearing about Laine Hutson as well. They asked LJ Mooney, are you tired of hearing about your size? He said, yeah, but it fuels me a lot. Just hearing that. You see guys have done it. I think I can do it too. So I just try to prove people wrong. That's a big thing for me. Proving people wrong and just wanting to put that in. He even said, as soon as you get drafted, first thing on your mind is get to work, start grinding. Maybe it's just, oh yeah, these are canned answers from media, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems genuine, Jesse, and I also genuinely believe that the Habs brass, even for these later picks like LJ Mooney, they're screening for this type of attitude because it is what separates the good from the great when it comes to hockey players.
Absolutely. And it's really starting to become emblematic of the culture with the Montreal Canadiens, and bringing people on that really fit that, we know is so huge, whether it's prospects, whether it's through free agents, trades, etc. They need to fit that mold of what we're looking for in a Montreal Canadien. Absolutely, LJ Mooney is doing that, following in the footsteps of a Cole Caufield. Obviously, so reminiscent in a lot of ways because of the size, because of the shot. That being said, there is a big difference between Cole being selected, fairly early on the first round versus LJ Mooney, still with the size. So I'm not saying that LJ Mooney is going to become a Caufield, but his shot is looking good in training camp. This guy's got unreal hand-eye coordination. It's going to be a little bit of a sleeper pick going forward. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. But, you have to feel like he is so happy coming to Montreal because there's just so many good examples for him already within the organization of guys that were maybe a little bit smaller in the past that have succeeded. Obviously, Laine Hutson winning the Calder last year. There's Martin St. Louis having a coach that you can probably relate to in a lot of ways. Makes a lot of sense. For me, this selection of LJ Mooney, though, again, you're kind of having this in mind where does he fit in with like a Cole Caufield on the team? But it's like, I think that we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but LJ Mooney is only coming onto this team at the same time as a Caufield. Caufield's going to be at his prime. We forget how quick these careers can kind of go by. I'm not saying that he's really the replacement, but really, I don't think we have to worry about, having too many kind of short guys on our team, because I don't believe that this team is meant to have a Cole Caufield and an LJ Mooney both within the top six. Can LJ Mooney maybe become the heir apparent for a Cole Caufield? That's big footsteps. That's elite level talent kind of going forward. But there's just a lot of X factors with his game, a lot of things just with the energy, with the vibes that you got to be loving about this player.
And the physicality, right? This guy's putting people on their butts, knocking Anton Frundell off his feet into the glass. When this dude plays hockey, he plays with some of the most energy ever. He said this too. He's like, I love to hit. That smile is infectious, just like Cole Caufield. And you're right. Again, these careers go by so fast. This guy's 18. Cole Caufield is, he's going to be probably around 30 by the time LJ Mooney is really starting to be that consistent, maybe middle six player if everything works out. Of course, again, these later round picks, you really don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You're hoping that they all develop, because the odds are most of these players we're talking about will never sniff the NHL, or if they do, it might be for a handful of games. It's the unfortunate reality. But again, the way the attitude has been for these guys, and the ones that show this kind of attitude have done well. Another short guy, Jesse, who is all about energy, Brendan Gallagher, right? Having that kind of leadership within the org for a guy like him could be great. So anyway, leave your thoughts on all this down below. This attitude is something that's infectious within the Habs, something we're drafting for, something we clearly see as important, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for tuning in every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.